Hi, I'm Rainer, and welcome to my train room. Decided to do another structure building video. Very simply because my shelf is full and I have no more room up there to put this up there. And so I picked this up at the Midland, Ontario train show a few days ago. And it's a Walthers Cornerstone heritage furniture background building. So it doesn't have all the parts to build a building with all four walls on it and everything else. It's designed to be a background building, and it's designed to be fit in a narrow space. And so if you look at the photo on here, it shows it's got a little loading door at the end and then a track running underneath the front of it. But I already looked at the kit inside, and these walls are designed so they can be cut vertically to make them even shallower to the wall. So I can basically make the building, well, I'll show you. I'll open it up. So that's the full width of the building. That's the height of it. So it's basically a four-story building. And instructions here, I haven't really looked at them too closely, but these are the end walls. So if you're looking at the left side of the building, this would be the end wall. And what you can do is, if you look at the back of it, there's actually a little line here, a cut line, and you can basically make the building this shallow. So this part right here is against the wall, and this sticks out, and then there's some other parts that's the corner column here, so that you can have a track running underneath the front of the building. The face of the building fits like this right here, and there's a column up the corner. And so you can have a building that's only this depth on the back wall. And I have a section right kind of behind here. Now this is going to eventually be what I'm envisioning as my paper mill complex. But there's a track that runs right against the back wall. It's actually kind of my switching lead for my yard, but I want to do some scenery back there. And right now it's just a painted drywall. And I think I can put this over there, kind of positioned over that lead, so I can use it as switching lead, or I can spot some box cars at the loading docks underneath the front of this. So I've got another Walters building actually that wasn't intended as a background building that I'm going to use some of that back there as well to kind of cover up that wall. In a couple of my earlier videos, I was working on some background buildings behind my yard, and I'll put a link up here for those. But I want to continue some more of that along this wall. So I think this is going to be a perfect building to put back there, and then I've got some other buildings to build around it. But I just decided that I would start on this one because, well, I haven't done any work on my lower level here for a little while. I've been working on a lot of stuff on the upper level. And I went to try to put this on the shelf after coming back from the train show, and there's just no room. And it's a pretty good size box. And if I get this built and then get that one other Walters kit that up there built that is in a similar size box, that'll free up some space up there. So I think I'll start on this thing. I'm going to figure out exactly what I need to do and start gluing it together, cutting it, and do a little bit of thinking about how I want to paint it, and we'll see how it looks back there. And I will be putting lights in it and illuminating it and everything as well. So let's see how this goes. So the first part of the construction is to cut all the parts off of the sprues. So I cut the front wall and the end walls off the sprue. And there's also a roof panel, and there is the kind of the back wall that the loading dock doors go into. And then there's a small kind of a roof, I guess a roof panel that goes across where the tracks go under the building. So because I wanted to make the building a little bit shallower, because my track is fairly close to the wall, I removed the back section of the end walls, and there is a line on the back of the wall that you can just run your knife down to cut partway through. What I did was I did a number of cuts along it, and then finally just kind of bent it and broke it off, and then I just cleaned up the edges with a knife. Same thing with the roof panel. The roof can actually be cut narrower, and it can also be cut at an angle. So this building is designed that you can actually put it at an angle or kind of into a corner, so that there are actually angled little lines in the roof panel as well that you can cut it to make it a little bit different. So the back part can basically be angled, and you can kind of fit it into multiple shapes of spaces. Once I had all the pieces cut to the size I wanted, it was time to glue it together. So I am using MEK, which is methyl ethyl ketone. It is a solvent and it works well for styrene. Basically what you do is you hold the pieces together, and then I just use a syringe to just put a few drops of the MEK along the joint, and it wicks in, and it essentially just briefly dissolves the two pieces of styrene, and then as the MEK evaporates, the two pieces bond together as one piece of styrene. So it works fairly well, and it works fairly quickly. Now you have to use it. It only works on certain types of plastic, and you have to be using it on two pieces of the same type of plastic. So two pieces of styrene together works really well. So what I did was the end walls and the front wall are held on by these corner brick columns. It actually comes with a couple of extra of those, and I'll get into why it has those extras later. So I just glued one of those onto each end of the front wall, just flipped it upside down so the face was down, and then just put a little bit of MEK along the joint and glued those on, and then kind of stood it up on end and glued one end wall into place, and then glued the other end wall into place. Once I had the end walls attached to the front walls, it was time to add the floor, I guess it is, that goes, or floor ceiling above the loading door. So I glued that into place. Again, the same thing, using the MEK, just holding everything in place, and started by working at one end and then doing the other end and just put it into place. And then the last part was attaching the kind of the back wall where the track goes, where the two loading doors are going to go in. Now in the instructions, it tells you to start gluing the windows in right near the beginning of the instructions. I didn't want to do that for one very simple reason. It's a lot easier to paint the walls if you don't have windows in place. So with this building, because it's open on the back and it's not a full structure, getting the windows in once the walls are assembled is going to be very easy. There's nothing in the way, so I figured it's better to paint the walls first. I know that I want to illuminate the building, and what I did was, because I use these 2-pin plugs, the same type of little 2-pin plugs for all of my buildings, I put the male connector on the building, and then I can use the same type of connectors underneath the layout, the matching connectors, and it's easy for me to unplug a building, and I can even move a building from one location to the other, and the plugs on all of my buildings are exactly the same to plug them in. I will be doing the lighting in the building later, but I wanted the wires in place, so I wanted to put them in into one of the front columns, because if I try to run it up the back of the building, my support framework underneath my benchwork makes it hard to get the wire in. So having the wire, a couple inches out from the back wall is going to make it easier to get it through the benchwork. So I ran some wires up the column and then glued the back side of the columns, the lid covers on. There's 4 columns that have them, and then the corner pieces. And I glued those on again with MEK. And then the next piece I put on was the roof. Again, same thing, put it into place, put a little bit of MEK at the joints, and let that grab. It doesn't take very long. It usually grabs in a few seconds. And then the next step was to take it, I just took it outside because it's a really nice day, and this thing's a bit big to fit in my little spray booth. It will fit, but it was a lot easier to just do it outside. It's a nice, warm, sunny day, so I took it outside and sprayed it with flat black primer. So this is what it looks like right now. And what I was saying is, these corner pieces, it actually comes with some extra pieces. It comes with 2 more of those extra corner pieces in here. And then it also comes with these flat pieces. And the reason it's got these flat pieces is If you had multiple of these kits, you could take a second kit, have it assembled like this, but have the side wall missing. You could basically put another kit in here, and instead of putting this corner column in, you could put this part in here to cover the joint between the two buildings. So they've designed it in such a way that you can take multiple of these kits, I think basically as many as you want, and extend them along the wall. And I'm assuming that the corner pieces are the same kind of idea, that you can wrap them around and build it into some different type of a building if you want. But it comes with a couple of these flat pieces that I'm not using, a couple of extra corner pieces. And it just allows you to basically extend the building. So that's one of the things that I've noticed with Walthers kits. A number of them come with some extra parts. Don't let that confuse you. They don't always tell you in the instructions what those extra parts are for, but often that's why they're there, is so that if you have multiples of these kits, you can build them in different configurations. You can add multiple kits together, things like that. I know with my shop in my rail yard, it was the same kind of thing. It came with multiple ways you could put it together, and it came with some extra parts, which is actually why I have an extra wall that I ended up using as a background building. So these kits come with extra parts that you probably won't use them all, but they're there so that you can, put this down here instead and have another building joining down. And you could just keep doing that because every kit comes with these extra parts that join them together. So, if you had a whole section at the back and you wanted a really long warehouse, you could just buy multiple of these kits. Anyway, at this point, I have it primed black. This paint needs a little bit more time to cure. It's dry, but it's a little bit soft. And then I'm going to be starting to actually paint it because I don't want a black building. But having the coat of black paint on it means that any lights I put inside will not make the light walls glow. They were not going to be opaque walls. Otherwise, with this beige plastic, if you put a light inside, it would just kind of glow right through. So at this point, I'm going to let it sit, let it dry. And then when it's ready, I'm going to start painting. Once I have the painting done, I will be putting the windows in place. And then I will start working on what I'm going to do for an interior on this, because if I just put it like this with clear windows against my light blue wall, you're going to see that it's a building against the light blue wall. So I have to make it look deeper, and I want to put lights inside it. So I'm going to work on that once I get the outside of it painted and the windows in place. So this is where I have it to now. I just need to add a couple of more details, put the back on it, and put it on the layout. So I tried a couple of things and it didn't really like how it was starting to turn out. So what I did was I painted, well, anything you see that's gray here, I painted with some gray Tamiya paint, just painted it with a brush. And then once that was dry, I painted the brown on the columns, and because they were just black primer, I just brushed some dark brown artist acrylic paint on here, and it just gives it a little bit of a kind of a grain to the dark colored columns. I took all the window frames and the roll-up doors for down here, took them into my spray booth and spray painted those dark green, just with the spray can. Once all of those painted parts were dry, I installed the window frames in here. And then the next thing I did was once window frames were glued in, I went and did a little bit of weathering. So you can see it's a little bit darker down here and it looks a little bit dirty underneath here. So I brushed on some kind of a rust-colored brown acrylic paint in just a couple of places to make it look like water had kind of leaked down and there was a little bit of staining, things like that. And I just kind of smudged it on a few spots to make it look a little bit dirty. And then I went in the other room with my airbrush and just kind of misted a little bit of a dark brown paint on here, as well as some flat black, just to make it look a little bit dirtier, kind of a mix of the two. And so you can see here, hopefully there's a little bit of what looks like soot or whatever up the top on both sides, both ends, and just a little bit of kind of build up on here, with the idea that, you've got diesel locomotives going underneath here and they're going to be giving off smoke and just making it kind of dirty. And the last thing they're going to be doing is scrubbing the building. So did that. And once that was in, then I installed the window glass on the inside. Now, I didn't want to do it beforehand because I didn't want to get the spray on the glass. I actually wanted to keep the glass somewhat clean. It doesn't need to be perfect. It is a warehouse or a factory after all. So what I did after that was I got some lights into the thing. So when you look at the back here, it does look like a bit of a mess, but that's okay because it's the front that matters and not the back. What I've done in here is I've actually put in 5 LEDs. So I've got a warm white LED there and a warm white LED there. And the reason I put these little brass plates in there, sometimes the LEDs kind of create a visually like a hot spot of light. And I wanted to make sure that there's no way they were going to make the front of the building glow. So if I put a little piece of brass there, it doesn't matter how much light leakage I have going that way, it's not going to make the wall glow because, well, the light's not going to go through the brass. So those two are warm white, and then I poked a third LED through here. This is just black foam core that I put a floor divider in here, partly because I didn't want it to look like just one big empty space, and it adds a little bit of interest to it if the lighting is different colors at different levels. So I've got 2 warm white LEDs here that are pointing this way, and the reason for that is I'm going to put a back wall on this, and I want them to light up the back wall so you can see the image that I'm going to put in there, and I'll get to that in a minute. On this one down here, I've put a cool white LED down here, so it's a bit more cool, well, bluish white to light up this area. Not brightly, but that's okay. And this is just some old resistor with a heat sink on it that I just sprayed some gray paint on it and glued it in to look like some machinery. And I'm probably going to put some more pipes and things like that in here just so it doesn't look empty in the front. I might even put a person looking out the window. I haven't decided yet. So that's going to be the next thing I do before I put it on the layout. And then what I did was I put 2 more LEDs in here, and those are a couple of really small micro LEDs that I drilled holes in. This is kind of the roof over where the trains run. And I put 2 LEDs in there. And the way these are all wired is these 3 up in the top are wired in series through a resistor, and then the 2 down here are wired in series through another resistor, and they all connect to this little 2-pin plug. And I've just got this on here for testing purposes, but this 2-pin plug, and then this other half I can wire to my layout and drop this one connector through a hole in the building and then just plug it in when it's ready to go. So at this point, what I've also done is I got online and just found a couple of images from inside paper mills and just printed them out low res on 8.5 by 11 paper and on my color printer, and just print them on and glued them to a chunk of foam core here, and they will fit on just like that into the back, and then I'll just tape that in place so it's removable. And then when you look through the front, there is something to look at, and it doesn't need to be clear, and that's why I said low resolution. I've said this before, is just fine because we don't want people to be looking in there and trying to pick out all the details. It's just to give the impression that the building doesn't end right there, and by having the image there, it makes it look like there's actually something more to the building than this little bit. And it works really well for backdrop buildings. And by putting that floor in here, I could use 2 different images. And so when you look in there, it looks like there's a little bit more, I guess, complexity to the building than just one big empty shell. But because this is this depth, I do want to do a little bit more in here. I've got a wire in here that's red wire, so I may put a little touch of black paint on it so it doesn't show as much through the windows. And I may put some pieces of pipe or something in there just to give it a little bit more detail just behind the windows. So I'm going to see how that goes. And once I get that ready, I will be putting it on the layout. But I will show you right now an image of what it looks like. Just like this, I put it on the workbench here and turned the lights on and took a picture of it just to give you an idea of the kind of look I'm going for. But at this point, I still need to add a few more details to it. So as you can see, I got the building built, I got the lighting working in it, and I got it placed on the layout, at least temporarily. So I've put it back there against the wall, and I've got the track running underneath it, and that works out really well. I am contemplating whether I can make it part of this this is the beginnings of my whole paper mill complex, these two buildings, and it's going to continue in behind me here. But I'm wondering about building some kind of an overhead bridge between these two buildings across the tracks. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work, but I'm going to experiment with that. But before I do that, I've decided that I want to do a little bit more of a backdrop behind these buildings, because I don't want it to be solid buildings all the way across. That doesn't look right to me. And now that I've got the backdrop everywhere else in the layout, I kind of want to do the same kind of thing here. So I have actually just gone through my photos and picked out another photo that I've kind of cropped, and I've ordered a print of it on some banner material, and I will do another video on that, actually, assuming it turns out okay. I've done that before with all of the backdrops that you can see up here at the top and then behind my town over here. But I'm going to do a bit more here along this wall. I've ordered another 8 feet of it, and we'll see how that works out. Also, these two buildings, I lifted them out to get the other one in, and these two buildings, I don't have the lights plugged in for them right now because I'm going to be lifting them out because I have a whole pile of switches back there, and they're not powered right now. I have to reach in between the buildings. When I put them in, I actually wasn't sure whether I needed to have them remote controlled. I really wasn't thinking about the fact that I'm going to be having to reach over and through these buildings to control them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull these buildings out. They're already loose there. I'm going to pull them out, and I am going to wire some of these cheap little servos onto them under layout, and I've got a whole pile of little brackets. I make these 3D printed brackets, and they work pretty well. I've got them on a few of them at the other end of the layout already, and I've got a whole stack of Arduinos here. So I'll be doing some work in this area with getting everything controlled remotely as well. Once I get that done, get the backdrop in, I'm going to be putting these buildings in, and then I can actually start doing some of the scenery along the back wall, a little bit more detail on that when I get around to it too. So I don't want to get too close to being finished or doing too much detail in the front here until I get it kind of looking better near the wall. So that's kind of what I'm going to be working on for now, but the building turned out okay, and I think it's going to work really well back there, but I need to do some work around it so it doesn't look like just the one building on a blank light blue wall. Anyway, thanks for watching, and if you don't want to miss the next things I do along here, please subscribe, and see you next time.